All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Today's the Day. I'm incredibly excited for this one in particular. Actually, we have Bronson Ashjian. He is by far one of my most influential, very, very, very close friends that I've ever had. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day with Zack Andersen. What up, what up, what up? Welcome to Today's the Day. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Today's the Day. Much love to everybody. Today's the day. I've had a lot of really cool experiences with him, but a little bit on Bronson. I'm gonna call him Bucket throughout this whole thing. Throwing it way back. Bucket grew up Las Vegas. Middle of three kids. You're the middle kid of three.
Yep.
Growing up out in Vegas, you were a 2-time state champ wrestler, which is extremely impressive coming out of Vegas, right, from what I hear. In doing that, you went and earned yourself a full ride to Penn State, right?
Kinda.
All right, well, full ride to Penn State.
I'll explain that.
Yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit. And you actually ended up like that. You'd think you end up at Penn State. You actually ended up staying back. You helped take care of your family, which shows a lot about you. You moved to Utah with a freaking broken car and $5, right?
Maybe $5.
Maybe $5, maybe a little bit less than $5. You went and took the LSAT and you ended in the 97th percentile your first try.
Yep.
Okay. You're bilingual. You speak Russian from what I remember, which is nutty. And you've supported a lot of people a long time. And as of right now, where you sit now, I've worked with you. We work in the same industry. You manage hundreds of people through and through. Like, you manage their experience from through the door till them making great money and running teams themselves. You train people on how to do that.
Yeah.
And you provide a ton of value everywhere you go. So all of that's great. The biggest reason I wanted to have you on, I mean, we've had some awesome conversations for literally years. Again, when I say you're one of my most influential friends I have, is like, you're someone, if I was stranded 2 a.m. 3 states away, you'd be probably top 3 people I would call, right?
I'd get there.
Yeah, you'd get there, absolutely. And we would have a blast doing it. Not to mention, you've really gone, and the real reason for this, because we could just shoot the shits all day, but the real reason to have you on here is because I've learned so much from you, not only in things you've told me, but just watching you and working with you, and seeing how you move and how you navigate. And then, more importantly, you just go and you do exactly what I think everyone's goal is to go and do. And you're not perfect, but you extract the most out of every situation you get put into. And I want to ask a few questions leading up to that, but you really do. You go get the most out of everything. Your work environment, you get the most out of it. Every opportunity you have, you're going and you're making sure you're attacking it and dominating it. And I mean, we have a joke between us. You always say we're built different, right? Like, that's how you go and approach things, which is really, really cool. But throwing it way back, tell us, like, starting out, grew up in Vegas, middle of 3 kids, right? So older brother, you, then younger sister. All through growing up, like, tell me a little bit about that in Vegas. How was that? What would that look like? Family situation, what was that like?
Dude, I'll be honest, like, growing up, it was a fun situation. My dad, I thought he made a bunch of money. He owned an asphalt company. So I grew up kind of like the rich kid in my group. Like, yeah, we were well off. My dad was making good money. And then when I turned like 15, 16, 2008 happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe 2008, I was like 14. And then basically what ended up happening is he lost it all. He was trying to go build mini storages. He was trying to go do a bunch of things and leveraged himself too much. And he never had anybody kind of mentoring him or helping him or whatever. Like, my dad was my absolute hero growing up. And then my last 2 years I spent in kind of like hiding, trying to make everybody think that we still had money, because I was a little bit embarrassed of our situation.
Mm-hmm.
And
identity crisis.
You're like, yeah. It's funny, you think it's like growing up, like looking back, it's so dumb, but like growing up, you think it's like yours, and like you think like that's your image and that's your stuff. But like the reality of it is my dad and my mom, and I had nothing to do with it. So I grew up what I thought was super wealthy, then had the brokenness. So I got like kind of the both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, dude, I was always a big people pleaser. So my dad wanted me to get straight A's. So I was always really, really good in school and focused on getting school, whether it was cheating, whether it was studying, whether it was whatever it was. I made sure that I got straight A's.
Yep.
And then, Yeah, I'm obviously not proud of the cheating part, but you got to do it. It's high school, right?
You got to do what you got to do.
What you got to do.
And then rolling into that, so through high school, 2-time state champ in Vegas in wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Which, from my experience, every wrestler I know, like there's a different caliber of person that's a wrestler, right? And then also to be a state champ, and then also to be a state champ in Vegas, right? So where did that come from?
So I grew up. My brother started wrestling. My dad was a wrestler. So I started when I was like 4 or 5 years old. That's where the Bucket nickname comes from. So when I was like 4 or 5, I wore headgear, and my dad called me Buckethead, and it just got stuck, right? So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I wrestled, and dude, I always I don't know. I always knew that like wrestling is a cool sport because it's you versus somebody else, and the harder you work, the better you're gonna do. Yep. And so like I just saw from a young age, the more work you put into something, the better off you're gonna be at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always got like a weird kick out of like working when people weren't working.
Yeah.
So like I would go run after practice, or I'd go do this or go do that, knowing that somebody else wasn't doing it. It kind of gave me an edge. And I wasn't planning on wrestling in in college.
Yep.
Last second I decided to. I had a coach that knew Kale, who coaches Penn State. Wrestling's a little bit different because of like Title IX and all that stuff. There's only 9.2 something scholarships throughout the whole thing. Okay. So because my grades were really good, I had a spot on the wrestling team, and then I did have a full ride with like school and all that stuff when you apply it all.
Cool.
But it wasn't just like a full ride wrestling scholarship. Yeah.
No, it's still super impressive.
Yeah.
And then I guess my question with that is like, okay, at what point did you notice, like, dang, I guess what I keep going back to is, like, I'm built different. Like, you like to work when no one else was working. You like to be doing the extra thing, which is odd for someone in high school. I was the opposite, dude. I was like, I'm going to do the least. I had 6 library aid periods. I would chill. I'd have a blast. I love my high school experience, but I didn't really have that, like, I didn't get that until way after high school, that, like, chip on my shoulder to go be the best. I did not have that.
Yeah.
Like, where did you get that? Do you think it's from people pleaser? Like, where do you feel like you got that?
I think it was a part of it. Like I'm actually trying to not be as much of a people pleaser now.
Yeah.
But like, honestly, I think that had a big thing to do with it when I was like growing up. Cause like I wanted to please my dad cause he was like my hero.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that was something so growing up, my dad was like best friends with Tom and Terry Brands. They coach University of Iowa. They're like legends in the wrestling world, right?
Okay.
And that's their mentality. So I saw them do it, and I went and lived with Terry Brands for a summer, and like,
yep,
it kind of just from a young age was ingrained in me, and
yep,
I saw it, and I realized it worked, and I just stuck with it.
Yeah, and you've carried that. So post school, everything like that. You've carried that all the way through everything. I mean, 97th percentile in the LSAT's just absolutely insane. Yeah. First try.
Yeah,
right.
Crazy.
That's absolutely insane. I remember when you were studying for that, like that fully consumed you, right? And you like that's just how you are. You go and you do things different. And then post that, even I mean to kind of brag a little bit for you because I know you're not going to like. You've gone and dominated in every work environment you've been put into. Obviously, you've been blessed with some really incredible opportunities. You've been put into some really cool rooms. But I mean, how old are you?
I'm 20. I turn 29 next week, actually.
You turn 29 next week, and literally in the last 4 years, you have gone and just in that span from 24 to where you are now, you've gone and created millions of dollars in revenue for these companies, hundreds of millions of dollars at this point in revenue for these companies, made millions yourself, done really, really well in that aspect. But more importantly, and kind of the reason I care to talk to you and have you on here is like you do things the right way. Everywhere you go in the industry you're in, there's a lot of like backlash you can get and you can leave a really sour taste in people's mouths. You've never done that, which is extremely impressive, and it's not easy to do. And that takes a lot of attention to it. You have to care. Right, about doing it the right way to do it the right way because it's really easy to do it the wrong way. So that's kind of where you're at now. And kind of the things I want to get from you and kind of your experience is you've been blessed with massive opportunities, but obviously you've taken advantage of them. With the opportunities you've had, you've been put around some really cool people, even early on in wrestling, right? You kind of adopted their mindset, right? In your business career, like you're surrounded by these people. You're now top 1%, these other top 1%. What are some things you see that they just do differently than other people? Like what are the best doing differently?
That's a great question. You're good at this. This
No.
podcast is going to be the real deal.
Yeah, I like talking. I like talking.
Bro, I think one of the biggest things with me was like, before I even saw any financial gains or saw any like anything hitting my bank account, right? Like I was doing things that like successful people would tell me to do, and not necessarily seeing the reward right away.
Yeah.
Like I'm even seeing it now. Like I have a family member that's talking to me, and he's like, dude, I've been doing so good for a year and a half. Like I've got my life back on track. I've been doing this. And it's like, yeah, but it's only been like a year and a half. Right. And like people obviously expect something pretty quick, always like immediately.
Yep.
And from the time I was 21, when I got back from my mission in Russia, to the time I was 26, like I was really struggling financially. Like I wasn't, nobody would know, but like I wasn't doing crazy well. Like I was making decent money, living and doing it. But I was doing all the things that like successful people would tell me, like waking up early, not spending all your money, investing your money when you like whenever you could, right? Like, and I like to think of it like as we have some mentors that like, I'm not going to say their name, but like really, really successful financially, and you want to follow them in certain areas, but in other areas, they're kind of just like a jerk.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, I kind of look at it as like creating the ultimate like quarterback or somebody like that, like NFL player. And it's like, you want Tom Brady's IQ, you want somebody's arm, you want Lamar Jackson's like playmaking or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so like, I would pick and choose from different people, and I wasn't so married to like, I see so many people, they get one mentor and they're like, so-and-so said to do this, so I have to do it this way, and I'm going to do it like this all the time.
Yep.
And like, I think mentors are super good, but I do think that you have to be self-aware enough to be like, I don't want to be like that.
Yep.
Necessarily, and pick and choose what you want from people. And
I love that. I've seen that mentors and specifically conversations, again, going back to the reason for this podcast, like some conversations I've had have literally gone and shaped my life and helped me go create the life that I love to death. And I learned super quick that some of my heroes are my heroes in a certain aspect. Yeah. Like I have heroes where I'm like, dude, that is the kind of dad I want to be. And they're broke.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
And I don't want to be broke. Like I want to be that kind of dad. I don't want to be broke. So that's the kind of money I want to make. That's where I attach myself there. That's the kind of investor I want to be. That's where I attach myself. That's the kind of friend I want to be. That's the friend I'm going to hang out with.
100%.
Like, and I have mentors, dude. I have mentors all across the board. And one thing I would stress too is like, and I know you're big on this, is you don't always need to go and have a millionaire that's your mentor, sits down with you and tells you how to make millions of dollars. Dude, there are literally the richest people in the world consolidate decades into hours of reading books, and that's something you crush in. Like now you do have like a physical network of these people. You're in that network. You're one of those people. But for a long time, even when we first met, like it was books. Like that's one thing we always had in common. Like that's just as good as hanging out with Warren Buffett. That's just as good as hanging out with Tony Robbins. Go and freaking read their books. Yeah. So I love that you mentioned that. Like there's literally like, don't go cling on to a mentor. And also I think a lot of people, like their parents, their heroes, which is a good thing. Like your dad and your mom should be your heroes. They freaking brought you up. They went through the freaking mud. They got you to where you're at. Yeah. Right? They should be your heroes. But if your dad is broke, don't go ask your dad how to make money, right? Yeah. Like if your dad is not happy, or if you're whatever it may be, wherever you fall short, go find someone else to supplement that. So I love that. So I think circling back up on that, the top 1%, I've always seen them as still having mentors too. Like my mentors, the people that I look at on a pedestal, they're still reading books. Like they're still picking people's brains. Like they're so humble and willing to grow, right? And then the next thing I would want to say, and kind of my favorite question to ask people always is, everybody goes and sees someone, and you've already kind of touched on it, but I want to go in depth a little bit. Like everyone sees someone where they're at always. Like that's just what you see. You never go and realize that they've been through everything you've been through, or different things that are similar. They've never gone, like it just seems like it worked out for them. And one of the things that frustrates me more than anything is when people go and they discredit people's success, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, of course he's happy. It's working for him. And they don't realize behind every single one of those people, there's massive, massive hardships. There's huge failures, as what your average person would call them as a failure, right? There's these really big lows, right? That then lead up to the really high highs, right? And something I like to ask every single person that I speak with is, it's like my favorite question is like, what's a specific time or multiple times in your life where it's like, dude, this was like this was the pits. This sucked ass. This was terrible, right? To the point that it was like bad enough, and it can be as bad, and feel free to share what you're comfortable sharing, but like, dude, that was the low of all lows. Like for you, what would that be? And part of the reason to bring this up isn't to be like, oh, like I don't want you to think it's like what was me. Like I want you to be comfortable sharing, and it's not not because you're such a badass, but it's because, dude, everybody's going through it.
Yeah.
No one thinks everyone else is going through it. And I think one of the most valuable things I learned super early was, hey, this dude that is like my idol has been through it. He told me the stories about when he was going through it, right? And that was like, now you're not alone. It's like, okay, like, dang, if Bucket's been through that, look where he's at. Like, I got this, right? Like, what's your low? What's your rock bottom?
Dude, I'd probably say so I got back from my mission. I didn't know what to expect. I have my uncle. He's probably somebody I go to a lot for like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, dude, you got to get out. And there was the lowest time was probably, I'm hesitant to even share it because I don't want to make my dad look bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like, my dad couldn't provide for my family. I was going to school and I was at a crossroads of like, what do I do? Do I go quit school? Do I go just get a job and start putting on for everybody? Or do I just focus on school and tell everybody else like it was a crossroad of like, how do I want to handle my life and what do I want to do? And like, honestly, I was a little selfish with it and was like, hey, I got to do what's best for me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think the way I thought of it is like, I can go take care of my family right now, or I can go put myself in a position to where I can take care of everybody for eternity and like really create something for them and actually be able to help.
Yeah.
And by my example, be something for them. And it actually worked out really well. So like, I was in school, I was working 2 jobs, and everybody was telling me to quit school. Everybody was telling me to do things. And like, I know, especially in the industry we're in, right? Everybody's like, yo, school's a joke.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't learn a crazy amount in school that like I wouldn't have gotten outside of school.
Yeah.
For me, it was outworking people. And like, for me, I was at the library every day from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Right. And like,
you're built different.
Dude, I was sitting there and like in my head, the reason why I liked doing it was because it was just like, nobody else thinks I can do school and put on and do this. So I'm going to do it all and make it happen.
Yeah.
So like, there was a time in my life where my my parents were getting evicted from houses. My sister was getting ready to go to school. My brother was struggling. And I had to make a decision of whether or not I was going to focus on myself and really try to make sure that like everybody would be taken care of long-term or be short-sighted and like go get a regular job right now where I was already working at a software company. I could have gone and gotten a raise and just focused solely on doing software. And like, looking back, I'm so happy I didn't do it. But like at the time, that was a really, really big crisis. And like, you know how it is. You look back at it and it's like, it wasn't that big of a deal. But like in the moment, you're like, dude, it's your world.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Your whole world is rocked. So, wow, dude. Yeah. So two things going along with that, that are so key and important. I'm going to touch on both of them. Then I want to dive into both of them. First thing is like something I've noticed with everybody that goes and really kind of gets everything out of life in any aspect of life, whether it be business, whether it be family, whether it be just their mental health, they always look long term, right? Yeah. They're always looking long term. They're always looking like not only how is this going to affect me right now, but how is this going to affect me 15 years down the road, 5 years down the road, which is really, really cool. So that's the first thing I want to dive into. And then also before I forget it, like, I think there's a time in everyone's life that goes and finds success, however you define success, that finds success. There's a point in time where the story changes from if everything's going the way it will, that's where I could get. Like, if all this happens and if they do this, that, like, it's going to work out. There's a point in time where that story changes to it's on me. Like, it's on me.
You're in control of it, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's extreme ownership, Jocko Willing. It's like, it's on me. Through and through, on me, regardless of economy, regardless of situations, regardless of circumstance, regardless of upbringing, regardless of family situation, regardless of company, it's on me.
Yeah.
Right? So my first question would be at what point in life did that switch flip? Do you feel like that's been something you've understood forever, that it's on you? Or was there something, and does that tie into early on, younger, when it's like, okay, it's on me. Like, it is 100% on me. My success is on me. My failure is on me. My happiness is on me. My depression's on me. Like, it's on me to go and get this figured out. Extreme ownership. When did that go and when did that switch flip?
I think wrestling played a big part in it. I think wrestling did help when I first thought about like, hey, the more I put in, the better I'll do, right?
Okay.
And it sounds egotistical or narcissistic a little bit, but like I've always felt like I was good at whatever I tried to put my mind to.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that, I was always like, and I feel like you probably felt similar. Like, hey, if I tell everybody this, if I go put as much time into real estate as I do right now into my job, I'll be one of the most savvy real estate investors there is in my head, because like I've just,
Yep. That's your identity.
yeah, I've been good at whatever I've really, really put my mind to and focused on. And I know I can focus and outwork people with it. But
On that,
go ahead.
you always start out good.
No, never. Dude, I remember we can go to the Viv days when it was me, you, and a few people. Like, bro, I remember being super, super frustrated because we had a rookie, one of my best buddies, you know him, but I don't want to say his name. He was doing well the first couple of weeks,
Yeah.
but he was also having people come and like sell the accounts for him,
Yeah.
right? And like do different things and getting a lot more help. And like, but he was up on the leaderboard, and like in my head, I'm like, I didn't ask for the help because I knew I needed to figure it out. And once I figured it out, I would do really, really well.
Yeah.
And like,
Which takes a lot of discipline.
dude, it was tough because you want to be immediately really, really good at it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would say I've never really been good at things right away to start. Like,
Yep.
I have my sales skills and charisma and like those things, but like, dude, I wasn't the smartest kid. I wasn't like the
Yep.
LSAT, with the LSAT, for example, they call it PTing, but practice testing. I was in the bottom 40% when I first started.
Yeah. See, I think that's so important. The reason I ask that, and I relate 100%, dude, I typically am terrible at things when I start. Like my track record of things I've started, I'm typically the worst one at it. But I think the reason...
I think this podcast might be different for you.
Maybe, dude. But even then, talking to social anxiety for sure early on. So figured that out throughout everything else. But 100%, like I've been terrible at things. And I think it's so important because the whole point of this is like, dude, sometimes people look at people, they put them on a pedestal, and I'll say it a million times, and everybody is just doing the same stuff. Some people just understand things a little bit differently. They look at things a little bit differently, and it changes the trajectory by a couple degrees, and you end up hundreds of miles somewhere else. Yeah. So like, absolutely. Like, yes, your identity to yourself is, I'm going to be the best at whatever I go apply myself to.
No matter what. Like,
no matter what, right?
Yeah, it's like, just think about it. If you go put 100, like right now you're probably working 80 to 100. People think that Vivint's just like, that you're just showing up at the office an hour a week, but they don't see the phone calls that you're taking all day. They don't see that you're working all day, the effects it has on your relationship, on the people you love, and all these different things, right? Like, if you took the same time and went and applied it to anything, you'd be
world class.
Yeah, you'd be world class at it. Eventually, it wouldn't start off like that, right? Yep. But like, you would be. So it kind of eliminates that scarcity like mindset in the sense of like, dude, with enough time, I'm going to get good. So
yeah. No
risk with it.
I think that's so gold. And again, mentioning scarcity mindset and all of that, it's just ways of looking at things. And I hope people recognize as they go and listen to this, there are so many common beliefs, so many common patterns, so many common stories that play through the top 1%'s head, right? In any aspect. Like the people who have found success, the people who are doing what they want in life. And I'm not saying it's perfect and I'm not saying it's great, but like people that a lot of average people look up to, that are living average lives they look up to, they have very, very common denominators. They're not that different, right? Like they see a few things very similarly, and those few things change everything. And I think one thing you mentioned there that touches on that is literally like, it's your identity to become world-class and the best because you understand how much effort you have to put in, how much time. And along with effort and time, that means sacrifice. If you're putting effort and time into something, that's taking away from something else.
100%.
Right? And when you really become fixated, and this is something that I've struggled with really bad. And I've probably my most asked question to people when I find people who seem like they have a good balance, and I've received a pretty common answer. I'm curious if you've seen the same, like, hey, how do you balance, like, you want to be the best, like you want to go and get to the point where you can take care of your family forever. That's not easy. That's big, right? That's going to take a ton of sacrifice. How do you go and do that and like make sure the other parts of your life are taken care of? And my first question started is, how do you balance it? And I learned pretty quickly, there's not a lot of balance. No. Like there's times and seasons. Like there's times where if you do things that way, think about, and just money is a really easy indicator, a really easy way to apply this. It's like, okay, if you go bust your ass now and get to the point where financially you're wherever you want to be by 35, how many more years do you really have to go spend with that family that you sacrificed for 10 extra years, right? You really sacrifice more than everybody else. But then the next 30 years, you have that much more time. Now you can go and deposit into those buckets. And I've struggled with that. How have you found that? Because in all of your achievements, everything from 2-time state wrestler, like your score on the LSAT, your career that you absolutely dominate in, you said it, like the effort you're putting in and the sacrifices you're making, like how do you go and cope with that, or how do you go and like understand that, and how do you see it?
Dude, balance is tough. Like I'm far, like you would admit, so far from perfect with it that if my wife Kim even saw that I was talking about balance, she'd probably laugh at me. Right?
Yeah.
Dude, I just get like, I don't know if there is, it's like what you said. I don't know if there is actually balance with it. Like I know what I want long term. And like, I think with a relationship, it's super important that they know where you're at.
Yep.
Right. And they know what you're wanting, because like Kim knows that how often I work, and like, I got really, really lucky. I think sometimes people get married so young that they don't know what they want. And when somebody finds what they want, the person they weren't on the same page at the beginning. Right.
Yep.
I met Kim a little bit later. So when I was 25, 26, I'd already started working a lot. And then I started dating Kim. So Kim kind of knew what she was
getting into,
signing up for a little bit more. Whereas like, I don't think that a lot of people, I watch reps get married at 21, 22, and like, they don't have the conversation of what they want or what their plan is. Right.
Yep.
And then they decide what they want, and then their spouse isn't on board, and then it gets a little bit tougher.
Yeah. It's super tough. And I think what's super important there too, is it's just like, I think a lot of people hear this, and I think a lot of people do hear people that go and take their occupation extremely seriously, and they want to be world class, and they hear it and they're like, oh dude, like they're missing the mark, like they're not a family man. It's like, no, why do you think people do it? Like the most successful people I know put in that 10 years of 12-hour days, and now looking at them like, dang, that's what I want.
But like, I think it's okay if somebody doesn't want to work that hard and somebody doesn't want to do what we do, right? Like that's okay. But like, I like doing it. Yeah. That's what I told Kim. She was like, why, like you working hard, I go, I'm happy when I'm doing that. Like if I was at the beach all the time or doing these, like I get like, we went to Europe and Italy we went to Switzerland and Italy the last couple weeks ago, and it was great. But like by the end of the trip, you're kind of itching to like get back to work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I like doing it. And so like, I think that helps a lot, is like, if you're working if you're working at somewhere you don't want to be, and like, that's when it gets kind of tough. Right. But like Kim knows that, my wife knows that I like working, and like when I'm taking the calls or when I'm doing these things or when I'm waking up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever time, and like doing those things, like she knows I like doing it. So
yeah. And I think that's so important. Like that touches on like defining your success. Yeah. Like the word success is thrown around, and instantly I think in people's heads it pops up like, oh, driving a nice car, having a lot of money, like whatever success looks like stereotypically and just on the surface, it doesn't matter. It's like, what's success to you, right? And that's why I get so freaking jazzed when I see my friends go and do what I know they want to be doing. I don't give two shits how much money they're making doing it. Obviously, you have to put food on the table. That's why money is always part of the conversation, because money makes the world go round, right? But
I mean, what you need money.
You need money. Yeah. That's why it's always part of the conversation. But unfortunately, because it's always part of the conversation, typically it devours the conversation. But it's literally such a side piece, right? To, are you doing what you want to be doing? Are you fulfilled in it? Like, what's your success? Define your success. And I think the reason I've chosen the people to be on here that I have on here is because a lot of those people have figured out, like, what's their success, right? And, like, they're working towards it actively. Like, that's inspiring way more than making a lot of money and being a dick.
Yeah.
Right? That's way more inspiring than being tangibly successful with really cool things and not happy. Right?
100%.
So I absolutely love that. And that kind of goes into the next question on all of that. It's like, okay, successful people or people that are doing what they want to be doing, they look at things long term. I see my friends and like my peers and my reps or anyone that are the least happy, that are having the most internal conflict out of everyone. And those are the people who are also the freaking shortest sighted. Like, they're looking at things so, like, today.
Yeah.
Like, that's not saying don't be present, because it's so important to learn to be present. But don't look at your problems and your struggles as like a survival, like look long term. So rolling into that, I think that's something that's very common with people that are go ahead.
You go like adding to that, like you look if you live right in the moment. I mean, I'm very young still. I feel like 29, but like I look back at like the toughest time in my life, right?
Yeah.
And now looking back at it, it's like, it wasn't that tough.
Exactly.
So like if you live in that moment and you let that moment consume you, like, dude, I'd be in a completely different spot.
Yep.
Right. But like the long-term picture, it does allow it to where like what we were talking before the podcast, like I'm going through a lot right now with like work and school and all that stuff. And like, I know that in 5-10 years, I'm going to look back at it and be like, that wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, exactly. So. And that's like, it's like a superpower. It's like armor when you can look at things like, oh, right. And one thing I'm very good at now, because I did not used to be good at this. I used to literally let things absorb me and like destroy me in every aspect of my life. One little hard thing. And I've had some really hard things, right? But like now I think I'm glad I've had those, because now I have looked back and like, oh, whatever. Yeah. And now big things happen and people in my life are like, dude, how's that not rocking your world? And I laugh. I'm like, this ain't the first time. This ain't going to be the last time. Right. And like, it's not, nothing's changing. Like the only thing that's really going to impact me is how I let it affect what I'm doing day to day. Right. And that's where I think living in the moment comes in, because I'm very aware of what I'm doing day to day, second to second. Like
you're probably better at that a lot more than me. You're really good at it, being like,
be where your feet are.
Yeah.
Right. I've had some really good friends and mentors go and tell me just be where your feet are, which is super important. But I'm where my feet are, but I don't let the problems consume my world. Right.
No,
so I think it's super important, super inspiring. The next thing I kind of want to ask is like with everything, with all of your highs and your lows, like so bouncing off that, like your lows, the situation you were in, you had a lot of people depending on you. There's a lot of pressure there. There's internal conflict, which is why it's a low. Because there's one part of you that wants to do one thing and one part of you that wants to do something else. Yeah. What was a time where it was like freaking ecstasy, like cloud 9, nailed it, like floating? You know what I'm talking about? Like crying happy tears. Like where was something like that in your experience? What's something that stands out?
I mean, aside from like obviously like getting married and doing like,
of course,
weddings and all those things, right? Like,
yeah.
Honestly, probably the happiest I was our first year when we were trying to build this like sales org, and we were trying to do all these things, and like we're living in Airbnbs and we're doing all sorts of stuff, and it's like the Holly Grove experience, right? And those are the times you always look back at and you go through your pictures and you're like, wow, like those were really, really cool times. And that was probably when and to add to it, like we were growing faster than we've ever grown, because I think of that, like we were enjoying the time so much. And
yeah,
I would say a few years ago when that was probably like I finally started making a little bit of money. I finally started to like see the end in like that there was an end to like the problems.
Yeah, there's like light at the end of the tunnel.
There's light at the end of the tunnel, and like that was probably a time where like I knew I was in control, and like I knew that like
yep.
Yeah, like that was probably the most happy I'd ever been. And like it wasn't the most money I finally started making some money, but it wasn't like the most money I'd ever made or anything like that. Yep. It was like we were doing something that we wanted to do. We were proving people wrong. We were doing things that like, and when I say it's funny, I always say, I would be curious to know your opinion on this. I say proving people wrong. And like, I feel like all successful people have like this that they're like trying to prove. And like,
oh yeah, the people in the shadows.
But like, when you look back, it's like
everyone's supporting you.
Yeah. Right? Like, like I was talking to actually our buddy Jake, yeah. And I go, dude, they don't think we're going to be able. He goes, who's they? Who are you talking about? I was like, they don't. And he's like, dude, everybody I know believes in you. I was like, well, don't tell me that. Like,
yeah, give me someone to fight against.
Yeah, right. Like,
no, I'm with you. And like the thing is though, is going along with that to kind of contradict him. There is always someone rooting against you. Always.
Yeah.
I believe that. Like I really do. Someone does not want to see you go and smash it out of the park.
But the reason why they're rooting against you is because they know you have the talent too. Right?
They know you can do it.
They know you can do it. Exactly. But they're just like, we'll see.
Exactly. And that's. Yeah, I love that. I love that. There really is. There's not often times where people are just rooting against you. And even if they are, you probably see them once every 3 weeks, once a month, once a year. They're not that impactful, right? But it's a really cool thing to go and like battle against that. It's a chip on your shoulder mentality. And I love that you brought up like that. that's your highest, like that's like your one of your highest highs. That's like your ecstasy. And the coolest part about that, the part I want people to realize, is that point in time was right after probably a few months or longer of like shithole. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? What did I just get myself into? What are we doing? This might not work, but I got to make sure everyone thinks I think it's going to work. Right. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm just assuming.
No, that
right?
was. Dude, I was dating a girl that I didn't want to date. I was doing things that I didn't want to do. Like, I was at a, that's kind of where the law school thing came in. And like, I'm not in law school. I'm still debating whether I want to do it or not, because there's a lot of benefits for it. But I remember being at a point where I was like, what in the world am I doing?
Yeah.
And then we went and figured something out, and it worked out really, really well. But that was probably like one of the, I wouldn't say it's the lowest point of my life, but it was one of the scarier moments of my life, just because like I started to waver a little bit in my self-belief, which was very, very rare.
Yeah. No, and that's that. I think that's what I want people to realize is like, and I've realized it every time I go and hear a story of someone's high. My follow-up question is, what did it look like right before that?
Yeah.
What was life like right before that? The year before that, what was life like? And most times it's like, dude, that was like the scariest or the most unsettling or the worst or the, you know what I'm saying, time of my life right before that high. And it's so important to understand there's contrast, and there's always going to be lows, always going to be highs, and to rock with it, right?
Yeah, dude, I was battling like everybody has this door-to-door stigma. You don't want to be that guy, all those things. Like, I was the worst of it, battling that side of it. Like, I was not happy with who I was, not happy with work, not happy with all those things. And it wasn't even that I wasn't happy with like what I was doing. It was just I didn't like the image, and I kind of had to swallow that.
Yeah.
And once I swallowed that and started like, hey, embraced what I do, and this is how I make money, and this is how I can help people, and like saw all the benefits from it, like, bro, I skyrocketed, and yeah, it was awesome.
Dude, that's gold, and that's something I'm glad you brought up, because it's like you just mentioned, like when you started thinking about helping people and all of that, and that there's something about you that's super, super special, and a lot of people probably don't know or realize. Obviously, I know you treat people really well, you help people a lot, but like seriously, what like makes you click is helping people.
Yeah.
I've seen you be more stoked on little chances to go and like make someone else's life a little bit easier than something dope that was happening in your life.
Yeah.
Right? And where do you find like, do you feel like when you're helping other people is when you find the most fulfillment? And where does that come from? Like how do you have that approach when things are hard in your own life? Right? Because Lord knows it's not always sunshine and rainbows on your side. Like, how do you keep that as a focal point of like, dude, I want to make sure I'm always helping people?
That's a loaded question. There's a lot to that question. I think for a financial side first, like, bro, and I'm there's probably people that would disagree or whatever. I think if you learn how to make other people money, you'll make money as a byproduct, right?
Yep.
Like, one of the coolest parts for the door-to-door industry and what we're doing is watching somebody that comes from the Excalibur kiosk turn into a 6-figure income and like doing all these things, like giving them their first check. Like, that was one of the most fulfilling things. We're in an Airbnb. My buddy Tanner writes a check to our rep for the commission and all those things, and hands it to him when he's in this yellow bunk bed that we bought. And like the look on his face was like the most fulfilling thing I've ever experienced.
Yep.
And so like I learned at that moment, like if I can just go make everybody else money, then I'll make money as a byproduct, and I'll be fine. Yeah. And I think the helping side is like, I get nervous to come off as like egotistical. I've always felt special. And like, I've always felt like my favorite poem of all time is, your deepest fear is not that you're inadequate, but that you're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Right. Like, that is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. And I've always known that like I was kind of special. And like, so wanting to help people was like, if I don't do this, I'm not gonna fulfill my like highest potential. And like,
yeah. So your fear is literally like, your fear is falling short of what you could do. Yeah.
It's like, and I didn't think about this till David Goggins said it, but he talks about going up there and you die and you look at a man in the mirror and they read off who you could have been. And then like, he's sitting there as a 300-pound man, and he's like, I didn't want to be there and then read off this guy that wasn't me.
Yep.
It's like, that helps a lot too.
It's like Ed Milet. Ed Milet says he thinks heaven is going up. And they say, hey, this is the perfect version of yourself. And be like, what up, bro? We're freaking identical. right? That's heaven. And he says on the flip side, hell is going, dying, you go up to heaven or you go wherever, right? And hell is going, and they're like, hey, this is what you could have been, and you don't even recognize them, right? Which is, it all ties in. That quote is super, super cool, and I've loved seeing people look at things that way. Yeah, I think it's the best way to look at it, right? So going off of that, one thing that I ask every single person as they come on here, and kind of the point of it, like today's the day. We talk about what it means, like we talk about the point of it. Obviously, it's the freaking mantra. We love it, but today's the day. Like really, at its core, it's like, dude, this is kind of it. Like today's all you've really got, right? Yeah. Not to get all deep or whatever, but like tomorrow's not guaranteed. You have no idea. Right. And one thing I've realized, like absolutely 100%, whether people realize it or not, the happiest people, the most successful people, the people doing what they want to be doing, they're living by that mantra.
Yeah.
Like today's the day. This is all I've got. They're extracting all of the good they can possibly extract out of every interaction, every opportunity, everything. And they're also mitigating the negative effect of every bad thing that can go and happen. Right. So again, the big reason you're here, there's a whole lot of reasons. Like I love talking to you. I love the way your brain works. I love how you think. I love what you've done, right? And how you've impacted people, including myself. But like really at its core, like you really do. You live by the fact of like, dude, every interaction I have, I'm going to extract all the good I can out of it, right?
Yeah.
And then every bad thing that happens or thing that could be perceived as bad, I'm mitigating that. I'm going to go and make sure I don't let that throw me off track, right? So I guess my question is like, where do you go and get that mentality of like, okay, like, and I know we've touched on it quite a bit throughout this whole thing, but like, where does that stem from? Like, dude, yeah, this is kind of all I've got. Like, where do you get that skill set of just extracting the most out of life, or that lens to look at life through? Where does that come from? And how can you go and help somebody else get that?
So like, I actually talked to my wife about this a couple weeks ago. So, and this might not be a good answer, I don't know, but like, I'm very religious, and like my church has helped me a lot. Like I'm LDS. Like for me, that has been a rock for me that's helped me a lot. And I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but like I always have looked at everything as like, what if really there is no God, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
And like all we have is like this life. And it's like, even when I make decisions, and like, even though my church it's like such an impact on me and like the decisions that I make, I make decisions based off of like, hey, what if this is the last day and like there is nothing and I'm wrong? And like, if I can live with that and know like, hey, this decision that I'm going to make, knowing if everything else just didn't matter, I'm still happy with the decision, I'll make that decision. Like,
I love that.
Yeah. It's just, it's like, I think so often we let everybody else control what we want to do. And like, even whether it is religion or whether it is a mentor, or whether it is whatever you want, right? Like they live for that acceptance or whatever. And it's like, what if that doesn't matter and that person didn't say that? And what happens if the church wasn't true? And what happens if all these things, like, would you be happy with the decision you made? And if you can answer yes, then it's like, dude, I did it right.
And I think following that, like, that's exactly the point. Like, that's exactly the point. The whole point of this is, like, honestly, you don't know what you've got. You have no idea how long you've got. If you go and you approach it like it's all you've got, you'll see how much more you get out of it. That's the whole point of this. And if people can go and see that, it's cool that you already do that without even realizing it. Yeah. Right? You totally do. And I think most people that find success do. Yeah,
and I think, like, it's really good to have people in church, like, religion, like, all those things, like, and I'm very religious. Like, I believe in it. It's in my core, and like, it helps me make decisions, but I don't make decisions strictly because of my uncle or my church or my this or my that.
Yep.
I make it based off of, hey, is this where I want to be? Is this what I want to do? Is this the right thing? And all those people that are in your life can help you make that decision, like, and they can lead you in the right direction. But if you're going to not be happy with your decision for the rest of your life, that kind of sucks.
Yeah. And I think approaching things, I think kind of it all comes full circle. Like everything with personal growth and happiness and mental well-being and everything, like they're very textbook answers typically. And people don't like to hear the same answers. That's why they go and hear it a different way, and it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But I really think, like, at its core, when you go and you approach things that way, that's also how you avoid regret. And I think the worst feeling is regret, because that anything in the past is cement. It's there.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere, right? So if you can avoid negative things that are cemented, like regret, that's one of the only things I can think of that's permanent forever. It's that's a happy life. Like, that's a successful life. And the way to do that, I think, is exactly like you're saying.
Yeah, I think the way to eliminate regret is to make decisions for yourself and not make decisions for other people.
Yep.
Right? Like,
Yep.
I don't really have regrets, and like everything I've done is what it's like you said, it's concrete, right?
Yep.
I just have noticed that people that do live in the past or have a lot of regret, typically we're making decisions for like other people or for based off other circumstances, whether it was their bishop telling it or whether it was their brother or their mom or whoever it was. People will regret those things, but I don't think people really regret doing things for themselves.
That is so gold. Like, that is, I mean, that's one of the keys, dude. That's such a nugget. I love that. Man, dude, I could literally talk for 3 hours. I seriously could sit here and talk for 3 hours. Wow. I know, I could talk. I could talk forever. Time's about up. But basically, if there was one thing, and we're gonna have you on again, we'll get a lot more out of it. But if there was one thing you could leave with people that's been impactful to you, that you feel like could go and help somebody, just go and really, my goal is go help people live a more fulfilled life, right? I don't care how much money you make, right? If that's fulfillment, I want to help you make as much money as possible. I don't care about this, that, whatever it is that makes you happy. That's what I care about. So, like, what piece of advice or what else would you leave with everybody? It's like, hey, this has helped me go and feel the most fulfillment, get the most out of life.
Honestly, as cliche as it sounds, I'd say be nice. Like I try my best to be nice to everybody.
Yep.
And I mean, look, if somebody crosses me or does whatever, I can be mean if I have to, but like, I don't like myself when I'm that way. And like, I'll just take myself from the situation. Like,
yeah,
I know that there are successful people that make a lot of money that are assholes to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to be that person at all. But then you see people like, I don't even know. I've never even talked to him, but like TP, like you just hear great stories about him, right? Like,
yeah,
he's just a nice person.
Yep.
And so like, I think if you always go and try to have an interaction and try to be nice with somebody and have them like you and have a good taste in your mouth, like eventually karma will catch up to you and you'll be successful, whether it's financially, like relationships, whatever it is, family, like
yep,
you'll be successful if you're nice to everybody. And
I love it.
Yeah.
That's called gold advice. That's called elementary gold advice. But no, Bucket, thank you so much, man. I love you to death. I hope everybody gets as much out of this stuff as I do. So I love you. We'll tune out, but today's the day, baby.